Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon Brown, owner of United Gamers Nations and a lay counselor, and with me today is the wonderful Tim DeNock of Break the Meta. And welcome to today's broadcast, where we have a particular topic that has been prepared for you guys, and boy, this has just been one topic that has been really important to me. And so this is my week for kind of going over things. So I just wanted to jump right into it. So yeah, so if you saw what we just posted, you know that today's topic is specifically related to how to love your enemies. And this is something, honestly, that God has been working on me for years. I could think about some times where he was working on this for me, like at least 9 years ago, if not more, where there's just multiple times where different people came up in my life that I did not like. And then some of those people that I did not like took the extra step to not only be difficult to be around, but they actually messed up my life in some shape, way, or form. I think I might have mentioned this a couple times in our previous broadcast, but there was a whole family friend that had been in my life since I was 5. They were my parents' friends. They weren't really directly friends with me, but they had a son that I did my best to get along with, whom I genuinely loved. And their son had Down syndrome, and he taught me a lot about patience. He taught me a lot about, just loving all different types of people. And it was really good to get to know him and everything. But the parents themselves, they obviously didn't have that same kind of, issue going on. But they were manipulative. And in 2012, all of this kind of manipulation hit a fever pitch, and there was just an absolute fallout that ended up happening right before Thanksgiving, of which they spent a lot of time just destroying my character. Like, I think it was about 2 hours worth of that, and then 30 minutes worth of destroying my parents' character, and then demanded that I apologize for crimes that were not even grievous. Crimes, yes, crimes that were not even grievous. They were just specifically miscommunication issues, really. And it was very traumatic for me. And once the break happened, me and my family began losing other friends in the very church that we were going to, and that was very hard. It's one thing to go through a traumatic situation with a friend that has such disdain towards you and has manipulated you for a long time. It's another thing to have that same person go a step further and pulling friendships away from you by sowing lies and discord and strife among them. And now, granted, just about every person that they pulled away from us has been restored back to us. But it really set the stage for me to begin to learn how to love my enemies. Because on that day, for all intents and purposes, when the fallout happened and our friends started leaving us in the church, they became my enemies. They essentially became my enemies, but that became a unique opportunity for me to begin to love them and to forgive them. And so that's what I want to kind of go into this time, because I really want to kind of look into what an enemy is, why they're an enemy, why we want to react in specific ways with them, and what Jesus says about all this. Because this is a very tough topic for a lot of people, and especially now when there's a lot of chaos and strife and disorganization going on in our country, I think there's no better time than to really look on to what the Word says on how to treat your enemies. So with that said, I had a couple questions that I talked to you about before this point, Tim. And the first one that I wanted to go into was, who or what counts as an enemy. Because I think if we're going to figure out how to help our enemies, we first need to recognize what that looks like in our lives. Now, I have specifically a Merriam-Webster definition of what it looks like, but I want to just kind of look at like what your perspectives are, Tim. Like who or what counts as an enemy to you?
That's an interesting question, because if you'd asked me the same question 10 or 15 years ago, I would have had tons of answers, like this person and this person and this thing and this thing and this thing. And where I'm at currently, I don't really see a lot of people as my enemies. I see people as aggressors, and I see situations as aggressive, and I see entities as aggressive. But I don't know. To me now, it's a matter of perspective. But I guess somebody that you would see as an enemy is somebody who ultimately doesn't have a unified perspective on the welfare of I don't know. Like immediately when you say the word enemy, I think about me versus something, or me versus somebody.
Yeah.
You know, like it's weird. Like when you have sports teams, like the Green Bay Packers, go Packers, you know, or the Rams or Chiefs or whoever. You know, they're both teams, and you know sometimes players hop between different teams, kind of like when Brett Favre left Green Bay and went to the Vikings. That was a big deal because you know they're enemies. You know, it's like, okay, so you used to be on this side, now and these guys were your enemy. Now you're on this side, and your old allies are your enemy. It's like that was just a change in perspective. But I'm like, huh. I guess it's somebody or something that doesn't have the same goal as you.
Oh yeah, or like the opposite goal maybe in that case when you're thinking about specifically. And like I guess it's important to say that there's different tiers of enemies. Like you've got like low tier, like you're in a competitive game and they're your enemy. Like that's just gonna happen. Their goal is to do the same thing but against you, you know, kind of thing. But then you have higher tiers where it's like, okay, it's not just a game anymore. Now they're against me. Like they're trying to destroy my career. They're trying to destroy my life. They're trying to destroy my whatever. So like, I guess you could say there are different tiers, but I think what you're talking about, like boiling it down to just specifics, like they're doing their goals, objectives are opposite of yours. Like they're counterproductive what you're trying to accomplish, essentially. The definition, like if we go into Merriam-Webster's, the definition is one that is antagonistic to another, especially one seeking to injure, overthrow, or confound the opponent, someone or something harmful or deadly. And then I wanted to look into one of the synonyms because I thought, you know, this is actually kind of applicable. One of the synonyms of enemy is adversary, and that definition is one that contends with, opposes, or resists an enemy or opponent. Contends with, opposes, resists. So I think that's interesting. In my mind, the definition of enemy, I like to keep it kind of loose because I feel like if I keep it loose, it broadens my ability to love people better or to love more people in a way. So like in my mind, and this is not, now I'm not a grammatical person. I'm not big on the dictionary and all the different words and their specific meanings. So if you're like a English major, this may irritate you, and I'm so sorry. Also, hello there, Austin.
Hello, Austin.
But for me, I would say like my enemies would be people that I don't like being around, that like actively irritate me and don't listen to what I have to say. I don't know, like I know that's kind of like putting a broad blanket out, but I've kind of kept it in that way only because again it just it enables me personally to challenge myself to love people more broadly. in a way. Like, it's like, for instance, like, if my enemies are only specifically people that have screwed me over, and then I encounter annoying people, with having this a little bit broader, at least in my sense. Now, maybe I need to adjust this, and you can correct me if I need to do this, but like in my case, it enables me to love the person that irritates me just as much as the person who steps on me. Now, granted, my trust is different, and one of the things we've mentioned in Thought Raid before is that trust and forgiveness are not the same thing. That you can forgive a person, but that doesn't mean you need to trust a person, because that trust needs to be proven by their actions. But forgiveness is something that is more for you than it is for the other person. Therefore, it's important to forgive, to let them go and let yourself go from the situation.
Brandon, I was thinking about this earlier because, especially with all this political stuff going on, people are saying that Russia and China are our enemies. And when you talk to anybody in politics right now, that's part of the big controversy, everything with Biden and how apparently, well, I won't say apparently, how purportedly, I think that's the right word, where it's been suggested that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were paid off by the Chinese government and Russia, all that stuff with Hillary, all that stuff, right? I have Russian friends. I have friends who were born in Russia. I know them. They are Russian, right? So thinking that Russia, a country, is my enemy. What does that actually mean? Like, who qualifies? If somebody not born from Russia doesn't qualify, then what is it exactly? Is it the country? Is it the landmass? The landmass can't do anything against me. Is it the people in politics? Well, you could say that all the people in our politics, some of them are our enemy, but it's like when you're in that position and you're trying to decide, you're essentially a judge, you're trying to decide, okay, am I for this or am I against this? For you and me, where there's not as much, there's more freedom and more grace in what we believe. Those people, they have to take a stance on certain things, or it's expected that they have to. So over there as well, it's like, I'm sure they have elected officials that are thinking, okay, are you going to be for the Russian government and the Russian people, or are you going to be for the U.S. government and the U.S. people? And that alone builds the concept, well, they might be our enemies because they might not have the same goal in mind, which when I use the term goal, I mean specifically our welfare. So like if you keep breaking that down person by person by person by person, everybody's got a reason for why they're doing something, and it's for their own welfare and for their family's welfare. Well, what if those people in Russia, uprooted, came over here and now live in the United States? That welfare for their family is now transplanted to our soil, which now makes them more in line with our policies and our stuff, so are they still, will they still be considered? Because I mean, the question is who or what counts as an enemy, right? Does their location count? I mean, if they're in our government and if they're sitting here eating our food and paying into our taxes and stuff, but they're Russian and, they speak Russian and they have Russian culture, are they still, like, what exactly is it? Is it a concept that's the enemy, or is it the person themselves?
Then you know what? I think we need to be more specific then. In this case, when we're trying to define enemy, and that's why the whole definition in and of itself exists, which was one that is antagonistic to another, one seeking to injure, overthrow, or confound an opponent. So in that case, or again with adversary, looking at that, looking with that again, one that contends with, opposes, or resists an enemy or opponent. Like someone specifically that is actively working against. And again, and then, but then if you think about it, the Bible takes it to this degree. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. So, like, regardless of who actually is even actually specifically contending with us and opposing us and trying to hurt us, they're not our enemy. That it's something supernatural that's not tangible in any shape, way, or form. So then, who is the enemy? But, like, I guess in the most natural sense, it's not a landmass, okay? It's not it's not the individual, like, people within the country. it would, or like the most global sense of the country, it would be the individuals within a country that are making decisions that are specifically making decisions against another group of people, whatever. The ones causing the issues, I feel like that would be the case. So like in the case of my specific situation, where we have the family friend that is actively trying to remove friends from me by using slander and gossip and trying to hurt me in that way, would make them specifically an enemy. But then an average Joe on the street who is rude towards me, but not necessarily doing...
No pun intended, right, Brandon?
Oh, I wasn't even thinking
average
about...
Joe.
I was not even thinking about that, to be honest. It's just a statement. On the street, an average person.
Average Joe. The average Biden.
Oh, God. Anyways, you know, but the person who is not really actively trying to work against me, they're not my enemies. So once that person is actively trying to make my life hell, I guess at that point they would become my enemy. They would be my enemy by definition standards. But even then, by biblical standards, like, they're not the enemy.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, a good example of this is King David. Before he was actually crowned king, you know, he was selected and anointed, and he knew exactly who he was going to be, but he also knew who was currently king,
right?
You know, and that current king, who was Saul, was actively trying to kill David, but he didn't look at David as an adversary. He knew that there was a goal in mind, and he knew that Saul was just like broken and messed up, and you know, he was like, well, I mean, I respect his position, I love him, he's not acting the way that a king should, and he's not acting the way that a son of God would, so you know, he's not my enemy. The enemy is the enemy. I see King Saul for who he is, you know, right. I'm going to respect his position because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Also, by the way, Stormy, like if you're gonna continue to watch, may I suggest like watching through YouTube over Facebook? Because like when it comes to YouTube, the more people see you, the more people see you. When it comes to Facebook, whoever follows you sees you. Just wanted to throw that out there. But either way, if you want to do other things, that's fine too. And I don't know, thinking about analytics here. Sorry, not the main topic. Anyways. So yeah, it's just interesting. It's like, you know, Saul. So yeah, like that. Yeah, the YouTube. I don't know, when it comes to analytics with YouTube, and it's I think the same thing with like Twitch too. When we're doing that, like for whatever reason, the more people that see you, the more people that see you. Like it's just a cumulative effect. Doesn't quite work the exact same way with Facebook, but it does work that way with YouTube. And just in this time frame when we're like wanting to like grow ourselves and stuff, the more the better. But if it's not something you feel comfortable doing, no worry about it. Like in the end of the day, I know that God will bless Thought Raid regardless. It's just something I want to kind of throw out there. It's just a educational moment. But anyways, that's not what the topic's about. Sorry. So going back to like what defines an enemy and stuff of that nature, and thinking about like with King David and King Saul, as you were mentioning, yeah, like in that moment, all technicalities, Saul was David's enemy. He kept pursuing David with the intention to murder him and anyone that followed him. But David was able to see beyond the situation, recognize that it was God that put King Saul into office, and that position needed to be respected. Wow,
that sounds quite relevant.
I know. Yes. And so, I think that's really very relevant, yes, to this time. But I think we've kind of covered like who is an enemy. Like there's two categories of that. One would be literally a person who is actively opposing you. So someone who's trying to actively, you know, destroy your reputation before others, who is trying to hurt you. You know, someone who is actively against you. So it's not necessary, and you got to be careful because I think it's human nature to lump a whole bunch of people into that category, and it's actually one person specifically that's causing the issue. Okay, you're a Patreon now. Oh, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey.
Thank you, Tony.
Whichever reminds me, I need to have that scrolling list of Patreons.
Brandon, I'm just thinking about this too. I think, even though this is our introductory question, and this is kind of the place for which we set our foundation for the rest of the conversation, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that question. It's so important to actually sit and identify that. Because when you're in a relationship with somebody, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a work relationship, whether it's just whatever, it is so easy to think, because I feel this way, this person is my enemy, right? Like my wife, for instance, there are times, because we're completely different personalities, where we butt heads, and it's really easy to think, just because we're butting heads, we're enemies. Like she's not thinking about me, or I'm not thinking about her, or like, oh, she just makes me mad, whatever. And it's like, well, she must be my enemy because we're not getting along. Just not getting along with somebody doesn't make somebody your enemy. And also, just because you feel a certain way doesn't make them your enemy either.
Yeah.
Asking yourself, okay, well, who or what counts as an actual enemy? Man, if you sit and think about that, there are very limited options.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think the reason why I've kind of kept the term in my life enemy so broad as I have is because it's like I recognize that there's actual enemies and then there's emotional enemies. Like your emotional enemy is like that when in that moment where you feel like you don't like someone because of what they done. And so like, like in that moment, like obviously you're not literally my enemy, but emotionally I don't like you right now. And so I recognize that it's like, it doesn't make sense. Honestly and obviously they're not actively against me, but in this moment, my God, if you don't shut up right now. That's why I've kind of had my term for enemy so broad in my life, because it's like I keep it that way as a buffer for myself, to remind myself like, okay, no, I need to love them, I need to pray blessings over them regardless of how I feel in this moment, I need to calm down, whatever. But it is important to know that they are not legitimately your enemy. Like, they're just, you don't like them in the moment. That's two separate things entirely.
Yeah.
So I think enemies, true enemies, by the book, are those that are actively hurting you. They're actively against you. They're actively trying to gaslight you or something, like they're trying to manipulate you or whatever, or trying to pull people away from you. They are taking actions against you, and it is important not to lump them all into one boat, and like when I say that, like lump other people in that boat with you because they support what that other person, that actual enemy, said, because I think that's where we get into trouble doing something like that. But that's what the definition is, unless you're a Christian, and then we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against demons and principalities and wickedness in high places. So that's another story which we'll get into. So I see that you're moving the topic forward, Tim, which was what makes a person, like, why? Oh, excuse me. Why do we normally want revenge on our enemies? And that's a very good question too, that I wanted to kind of jump into specifically, because like if we can figure out why we want to hurt our enemies or take revenge on them, I think that best equips ourselves to do what we're talking about later, which would be loving them. So I want to ask you that question. I want to see what goes on in your mind if someone is actively against you, Tim, and you can tell that they're going out of their way to try to pull people out of your life, to slander your identity. They, are clearly malicious towards you. What are you feeling in those moments?
Well, I think it all depends on the the relationship of intimacy and commitment. And we talk about this frequently, because when there's not a lot of commitment, there's typically not a lot of intimacy in healthy relationships, right? So if I know the person's not truly committed to me, and they, don't come to me to resolve conflict or whatever, if they don't operate in a way where I can tell that my welfare is on their mind, I can have more grace for them. It's so much easier because I know, well, there's not a lot of skin in the game for them, right? Now, if it's somebody like you, Brandon, and you do something that really bothers me, like I'm very selective with who I allow into my personal bubble, because you're very much like, I read a quote the other day that said, show me the 5 people a man surrounds himself with, and I'll show you his character. And it's like, okay, well, if I have this much belief in Brandon, and I know him to be this way, this way, this way, and he has this character, but he's in a situation where he's not valuing my my welfare or who I am, it's like, if I'm acting in a moment of weakness, it's really easy for me to question, okay, well, is he fake? Like, well, what's his deal? And like, I start to like drill into your psyche and analyze you and like second guess our friendship. But, why do we normally want revenge on our enemies? And I think it's just what I said. I think it's because we're not really solid in how we feel about ourselves. We're not really solid in our own personal value. Because if I think about Jesus, when the Pharisees came up against him and they were asking him all these questions, and there were several times in the Bible where it said, and the Pharisees came to Jesus and Jesus knew what they intended in their hearts.
Yeah.
He didn't strike them down. He was like, okay, well, let me get you to think about this. I'm going to answer your question with a question. And oftentimes he put them in a position where it's like, like I saw something the other day that said, there, like some girl, underage girl, was at work, and her boss asked her all these sexual questions, and he started laughing, and she's like, well, what's funny about that? And she started like addressing, okay, well, why do you think this is funny? Right. And basically what the thing said was, when somebody's held accountable for their actions, they don't find as much humor in it, or accountability does everything, but, I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but I don't know, man. Like,
but what reasons would drive you? Like, what the question is like, why do we normally want to take revenge on our enemies? Like, if you've truly been screwed over, like, why would you want to take revenge on a person?
Well, I think ultimately it's just because I think my value or my personal welfare is threatened.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus didn't think that his value was threatened. I mean, he was very secure. He's right. Like, because guys, if you're not a Christian, understand, like, the way Christians, or specifically followers of Jesus Christ, the way specifically followers of Jesus Christ are supposed to navigate life is to be the salt of the earth. And I don't mean that from a high and mighty perspective. I mean that from the perspective of, hey, we know that we're valuable. We know that Jesus has already paid a price for us. We know who we are. We know that we are protected, we're saved, we're loved. And we know that about you too. And when you walk in brokenness like we do as well, we know that you're covered under the same grace as we are.
Right.
So it's like, why should I view as an enemy when I know God doesn't view me as an enemy, right? Yeah. I should view you same way that God, and that's the whole dynamic there. Yeah. So why do we normally want revenge on our enemies? Well, I think it's really easy to be in our flesh and not see other people the way that we're called to as Christians. But if you're not a Christian, you don't really have that standard. All you have is the world that's large enough for you to control, that's just small enough for you to control, and anything outside of that, it's like, okay, well, because I can't control that, and it's beyond my limited resource, and things are going to attack whatever I have fabricated, manufactured, and protected as my identity. Well, that stuff is my adversary and my enemy, because they don't care about my welfare, because they don't have a higher standard.
I just love how you're going through all this other stuff connected to it. Because it's like I'm not. I think what I'm trying to like pull out of the situation is like, I know that you do all those things, Tim. I'm just like specifically like wanting to look on just like why we want to do that, so that way we can address that like properly kind of thing. So like in my case, why do I want revenge when people do things to me? Because like okay, so like for instance, when the fallout happened between me and the family friends, I wanted revenge. I really did. I wanted to inflict pain. I really did. I wanted to hurt the father, because he was the perpetrator of most of the problems. I wanted to alert the entire church of their crimes, so that way they would get kicked out of the church. I did. I wanted them out immediately. They're not safe. They're not good for the environment. they are GMO, whatever. Like, get out. I wanted to. I don't know. There's a lot of things that I wanted in that moment before God started to get me to look at leadership differently. I frequently prayed a lot of our leaders in the past that they would go to jail. I didn't really want them to die, granted, but I did want them to go to jail. I wanted them out of office. I wanted their sins exposed. I wanted revenge for the things that they've done, their transgressions against the country. And then God began to work on my heart and stuff of that nature. But I recognized that the reason why I wanted that, the reason why I wanted revenge specifically, was because I was afraid. I was afraid that they would, if revenge didn't happen, they would still be able to hurt me. If revenge didn't happen, then they would maybe kill me, literally. I was afraid that I would lose more friends. I was afraid that just that there would just be more pain and suffering on my part. And that's why I want revenge. I didn't want revenge. If you were to separate me from my fear, it's not up for me to. I don't care if that happens or not, because my security is not in my ability to get revenge, but in God. But because of the fear, because of that, that's why I wanted revenge, is because I didn't want them to hurt me again. So I want you dead. I want you in jail. I want you beat up, because if that doesn't happen, then there's a good chance you're going to come back and you're going to hurt me again, and you're going to hurt my family, and you're going to hurt my friends, and you're going to isolate and ostracize me, and I don't want that. And so that's what I'm going at when I'm asking, why do we want revenge? What's your specific reason for wanting revenge? That's what I'm asking. What drives us to want revenge? So for me, it was fear.
Well, I think it might be a matter of just being unfair, because I know when I do things that are contrary to what a person wants, or contrary to another person's welfare, because, let's be honest, we're all selfish people to a very large degree. I know that frequently I'm held accountable for that stuff, and it sucks. I know that when I'm feeling like somebody is being an aggressor towards me, I want them to be held accountable too. It's well, dude, you can't just do that to me. What do you mean? That's why it angers me so much when I see people speeding all around me and they don't get caught, But the second I go more than 6 miles per hour over the speed limit, or the second I roll through a yellow stoplight, and it's well, dude, what about this person? Well, what about this person?
Unfair.
And that's why that one verse in the Bible where it says, "Don't call out the speck in your brother's eye or your neighbor's eye when you got a log in your own." That's why it makes me so upset. Because,
oh, I feel that so much. So yeah, that's what I was trying to get out. Unfair, afraid, angry. Reasons what draw us to want revenge. I'm angry, I feel betrayed or whatever, so I want to get revenge because of that. Because if we can recognize that I'm afraid, or I feel like this is unfair, then I can recognize, why am I afraid, and why do I feel like this is unfair, and am I responsible in any of this? Because if we can recognize that, that can really help us back down from that revenge. Because that's the thing, revenge blinds us from our own problems and just sends us into, what's the word, like onto a crusade, and reality is we are very capable of the same thing the other person is doing to us. And so by wanting revenge, we are bringing judgment on ourselves in the process, because you're talking about unfair, like, you know, how can this person not be pulled over and that person not be pulled over and that person not be pulled over, while meanwhile I also am going above the speed limit. like there's a scripture verse that talks about, like, you don't want to be like afraid of the authorities, then, you know, do what they say, kind of thing. Like, you know, it's like, it's just like, you know, it's like, if you've broken one law, you've broken all the laws, kind of thing. It's just like you have no moral standing ground with those feelings. So it's just it's interesting. But that goes into how then does Jesus want us to treat our enemies, and what does the Bible say? So I wanna take a second now and to kind of shift gears, so we know what an enemy is, and we know why we want revenge against the enemy, but how does Jesus want us to specifically look at this? Because honestly, more than any religion, any other religion, more than any other philosopher or whatever that has existed, I think Jesus really set the bar high for us in a way that is really groundbreaking and life-changing. And that's why I really want to reference Jesus in this moment, because he is the one who told us, you know, you've been talking about a tooth for a tooth and an eye for an eye, the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Something that was very accepted in America in general. But I say, and he just kind of took it to a new level, of which suddenly it forced us to become aware of our own sin, and to become humiliated, and to become conscientious of the other enemy in a different light. So I wrote down a couple of scripture verses that I want to go into, and I want to go into them out of the New Living Translation, because I don't know, that translation really hits me better than other translations do. And so for instance, so we were just talking about the tooth for a tooth and eye for an eye. In Matthew 5, and specifically in verse 38, it says, Jesus was saying, you have heard the law that says the punishment must match the injury, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer them the other cheek also. If you are sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat too. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Give to those who ask, and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. And I think that's so interesting when he took the standard, and it's like, when you hit adversity and someone just downright treats you dirty, you don't get back at them. In fact, almost in the way he described, you kind of set yourself up for twice the pain. It's like, turn the other cheek, go a second mile, you know, do these things. And it's just like, that was so revolutionary, I believe. Because it's like, I think Jesus recognized that it's like, we all have moments. Like, let me just going to the example of you driving above the speed limit, getting pulled over, and other people not doing that. When we're driving, we encounter hundreds of cars, depending on how long we're driving that day. So, like, if I'm going from my house to the mall, I'm going to encounter at least 100 different drivers on the road. Some of them have families inside, some of them have friends, some of them is just one person driving, but there are various amounts of people in every car that I pass. And I will see hundreds upon thousands of different people every day, and some of them have the same car. And so I don't see their everyday life. I just see a snapshot of that 5, 10, 15 minutes we're together on the same like lane heading in one direction, or the
Hmm.
car's heading the opposite direction. I don't know if they're a bad driver. I don't know if they're a good driver. I don't know if they're having a bad day. I don't know if they're having a good day. I don't know if they have a baby crying in the back. I don't know if they are a convicted felon. I don't know who is on the road with me. I just know what's going on in my bubble, in my car. And so it would be very foolish for me to get angry at any one of them, because there are moments when I am driving and I make mistakes, and I'm a good driver. I have moments where I cut out into the lane too quickly. I back out without looking in my rearview mirrors. I've had moments where I've nearly like driven into someone on accident. Like, I've had moments where I had to stop too soon and someone almost rear-ended me. I've had all these moments, and the person around me could assume that this guy sucks at driving. But I don't. I'm a really good driver. I just have bad days and bad
Hmm.
moments. And that's the same for every single person on the road with me. And so at the same time, everybody on the road with me has unique histories. And they have a certain amount of times they've been pulled over, and a certain amount of times that they got away with something they shouldn't, or whatever. And it's just like, while there might be other people that fly past me that don't get pulled over, that doesn't mean they never have been. That just means that in this exact moment they haven't, and I am. And it's like,
Hmm.
I can't judge them for bad driving because I don't see the entire history of their driving record. I just don't. And
Oh, dude, Brandon, this extends to so many
many
things.
things, yes.
Oh my goodness! Like, you remember when we did the homeless ministry?
Yes.
You went out with us that one time, and there was this group of people that we met, and one of them went by the name of Joker,
Oh.
and they were just a group of young guys, probably in their mid 20s, that were I guess they lived under the bridge down here in Winston Salem.
Mm-hmm.
And Joker, if you ever watch this, man, thank you for being part of my life, because it was kind of interesting, because walking up to them, they had all these weird like tattoos, and some of them had dreads, and because they lived in a different environment, they smelled differently than I'm used to, and walking up to them, I was a little nervous, because I know from my experience that people who live on the street have a much more different perspective on what it looks like to have confrontation. Like somebody just walking up saying, "Hey, how are you?" Like I, I was at somebody's house the other day, and he told me how this homeless guy came up and said, "Hey, could you help me with something?" And he was like, "Sure." And he followed him, just around the building, and the dude pulled a knife on him, stabbed him, and took his wallet.
Wow.
That's just the life they're used to. So me coming up saying, "Hey, man, how are you?" is a much different mechanic than me coming up to you, Brandon, and saying, "Hey, how are you?" And from his perspective, having tattoos and looking kind of tougher, that's just how you survive. But to me,
Mm.
it's like, ooh, are you going to aggress me?
Yeah.
But we entered this from two different perspectives and two different worlds, and we both had different expectations of how the other person would react based on our experiences. And then we both had different needs. Like, I was there trying to just talk to people, and I don't know exactly what his needs were, but they were just trying to live life. But we had a conversation, and it was really cool. Like, I found out that he's just like me, dude. He needs food to live. He wants a relationship. He had buddies with him. They were all friends. The relationship I was talking about. It was raining that day,
I
so we
remember
were
that.
all under the same bridge, even though we were from a different walk of life.
Which is not there anymore.
Yeah, that bridge is totally gone. But that's a really cool metaphor for Jesus. We're all under the same bridge. We're just from different walks of life. But when we look at each other, especially initially, before we engage in conversation, actually build a relationship, we have all these preconceived notions about what you need and what you think that you have and who you think you are and what you're going to do to me.
Yeah. So think about that. So imagine now if this same person started to literally get aggressive with you and he became your enemy. and like he, you know, he wants to hurt you. Honestly, obviously you'd want to defend yourself, but now this person has stepped away from just being uncomfortably weird looking to this guy actually does want to aggress me, you know. Aggress me. What a word. In that
Is it actually a word? Aggress?
I think so. I'm pretty sure it is. But like it's just funny.
Yeah, aggress, intransitive verb, to commit aggression, to act aggressively.
Yeah. So like so you know, and then that point, like what Jesus calls us to do is he calls us to love those people. Like to freaking love them. And I think, let me see. I think there's a issue. Oh goodness. There's another one that I got here. This is another thing that Jesus said. This is Luke 6, and this is verse 27. It says, "But to you who are willing to listen, I say, love your enemies. Do good for those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who hurt you. If someone slaps you on your cheek, offer the other cheek also. If someone demands your coat, offer your shirt also. Give to anyone who asks, and when these things are taken away from you, don't try to get them back. Do to others as you would have them do to you." And like that whole portion, do to others as you would have them do to you, that existed before Jesus like came on the earth. Like that was still a thing. But like he took it to another level. It was like, okay, you know, like, you know, it was understood up to that point that like it's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. If you hurt me, I'll hurt you. If you don't hurt me, I won't hurt you. Well, Jesus was like, if you hurt them at all, do unto others as you have them do unto you. So like if an enemy hurts you, but you don't hurt them, that's something you need to extend it all the way out to that far. And again, I don't believe that Jesus is calling us to be passive and to allow someone to hurt us. If we can avoid that, good. Like there needs to be boundaries and we need to protect ourselves. But if something happens and we weren't able to prepare for it and they hurt us, Jesus is flat out calling us to love them. And not only love them, but to pray for them. And not only that, I have had it in my life where God has asked me to pray, not that we just pray, oh Lord, may they get what they deserve, you know, may hellfire come down on them and burn up everything they have. What? No, like he has convicted my heart multiple times to pray blessings over that person. And I have another really great story, but it looks like you may have thoughts. Do you have thoughts, Tim?
No, I always have thoughts.
I want to hear your thoughts.
I just something that's really hard to swallow, but is also really good, and I always get convicted by it. There's a verse. Once again, I don't know which one it is exactly, but it says that thieves and robbers, you know, people who are like really bad people, find it easy to love their families as well. Right. So when you love people that it's easy to love, I mean, that's good and all, but Jesus is looking for somebody to love those who it's difficult to love, you know? And it's like, I mean, I guess that's true because, you know, I'm a big fan of the Discovery Channel and, you know, nature documentaries and stuff. And, you know, when you're so focused on, I don't know, the life of an otter or the life of a rabbit or an antelope, and then, oh, the devilish cheetah comes out and kills the baby.
No!
You know, you look at that cheetah like, oh no, oh, poor antelope cheetah, you know, rotten hell, you know, you need to die, bad cheetah. But then, you know, you zoom in and you follow the cheetah, and the cheetah takes that baby antelope and feeds its babies. Now, if you were focused on the cheetah's life and you were if you were viewing and, you know, observing the lifestyle of what it's like for a cheetah to raise several cubs, you know, they have their own dangers, you know.
Yeah.
They're also hungry. They don't eat leaves. They eat meat. And the only way that you can eat meat in the wild, well, I mean, I guess if you stumble upon something that's already dead, but if you go out there and kill something, you know?
Yeah.
But it's all just a matter of perspective, man. Yeah. Like, you don't know why those people who are doing sinful things and robbing and you don't know why they're doing it. You know, they might be down in this, you know, spiraled at the bottom of a spiral hole, well, or whatever, and they can't see their identity because there's so much in darkness, and they think, well, the whole world is against me. Nobody loves me. I'm not worth loving, so I'm going to do whatever I can to survive. Nobody's going to do it for me.
The whole world. Because you said they were in a hole.
Yeah.
And I guess technically the whole world would be against them in that situation. But there is a whole world out there for them to discover, but they're just currently stuck in a hole.
Guys, say it with me. Brandon, you're such a dad.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
That was for you, Stormy.
Oh my! Well, I'm a dad in training, is what I am.
A DIT.
A DIT. But yeah, that's a really important perspective to have, though. Again, this cannot be stated enough in Thought Raid. Hurting people hurt people, and I wish I knew where I heard that from. I think I got it when I was in college, specifically. It's not mine. I can't claim it as this came from Brandon, but this is definitely something that hit Brandon's heart and stuck in his heart, and it was a life changer. Your enemies have their own lives. They have their conceptions and misconceptions. They have their own problems. And if they're hurting you, that means they have been through some crap that has made them justify what they're doing as okay. I can't think of a particular enemy that doesn't also have a traumatic past of some sort. Or maybe if it's not traumatic, maybe they grew up with a silver spoon in their mouth and no one challenged them, and so that they felt like, you know, this was okay. And even then, I wouldn't call that not traumatic, because in a sense they have been lied to their whole life, and they have come to a place where they have felt like this is okay, and they have missed reality. And so it's like, if you live your life in a bubble and no one shows you that this is not okay, and then they start doing bad things, you got to realize they don't know. And once they do know, they might change. You don't know. Like, that's why Jesus calls us to love our enemies, because we don't know what they've been through, and we don't know what it would take for them to step away from the evil that they're doing. Because he's Jesus in the Word, he's not saying that what they're doing is okay. He still refers to them as your enemy. So he's not validating the enemy as in what they're doing is actually okay. No, it's wrong. There's a reason why they're your enemy. But they have things they're not seeing, things they've been through, struggles that they're facing that is all accumulated for them to believe this is okay when it's not really. And that's why God wants us to love others, because think about it. If someone was aggressively coming at you and they were praying for your death and destruction and they wanted to kill you, would you listen to them? Just, would you listen to that kind of person, Tim?
No.
Okay.
Of course not. So
why do we think that revenge is going to make our enemies disappear?
Because it makes us feel so much better. Because we know that somebody's suffering while we're suffering.
It's like, it's not like I feel like God kind of gave me like a revelation on this specifically. It was just like the reason why God wants us to repay evil with good is because if you've grown up in evil, if you repay evil with evil, you're just perpetuating the cycle. Like, that's like, they expect that to happen. They don't expect you to love them. They don't expect you to pray for them, especially if they're being really mean. Like, how are you going to know? How are you going to know by comparison that what you're doing is wrong if every time you do that, the other person gets up there with you and they're getting aggressive with you? Like, there's no way that you can compare how bad what you're doing is. But if you're doing something that's really, truly wrong and the person is not getting on that level with you and they're praying for you and they're loving you, that's going to convict you. And the Bible says it's like putting hot coals on their head. Like, it makes them think. Like, they can't help but to think, why am I treating this person this way? What have they done to me that would merit such a evil response towards them? And unfortunately, that may not always produce that result, because some people can be very stubborn. But that does not change what God has called us to do. And
Well,
go ahead,
Brandon, if I can just jump in real quick, I think
please.
there's two different schools of thought here, and when we're talking about them, we're talking about one where we want the other person to pay so they change. We
Mm-hmm.
want the other person to pay so they know how we feel. We want the other person to pay just because we paid. But Jesus calls us to do the complete opposite. He calls us to just love them, and give them grace, give them food, give them shelter, give them whatever, so that they have the freedom and they have all the things they need to not lack. And I just think it's interesting because the former mode of thought is all about control. It's about thinking that we can actually change a person. It's about thinking, okay, well, if I just exert enough force, things will change for my better. But when you follow Jesus and you understand that, well, your life is already better because God's already working things for the good, and you're just not seeing it. It's all a matter of perspective, because Paul said, I'm thankful when I have a lot. I'm thankful when I have nothing. I'm thankful when I'm healthy. I'm thankful when I'm not healthy, because God is always doing something crazy,
Yeah.
awesome in your life. But when you just back up and you take all the control off the table and you just love people, you're not trying to change anything about them. That's where the conviction comes into play, because you give them back the freedom to choose. When somebody aggresses you and you regress them, I guess that's the right term, and in response, you aggress them back, you essentially remove the ability for them to choose, or make it really difficult for them to choose to love you too.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think of the story again that I have of the customer that came into the walking company and was very aggressive with me and wanted to get these specific pair of shoes, did not allow me to say any, as I'm required by the walking company when I was working with them to talk about orthotics, talk about accessories, all that stuff. Couldn't do that. He wanted those shoes. He was bent on getting those shoes. He was gonna rip them out of my hands, and he wanted me to do it now. And I'm just flustered, because it's just I can't even think about what I need to do, because all my usual waltz and doing that is thrown out the window. And I ended up telling this guy, I was like, "Don't get testy with me," and boy, was that not the best thing to say. And at that point, we both became each other's enemies, because he was like, "Well, where's your manager?" I'm like, "I am the manager." And he's like, "Well, where's your district manager?" I'm like, I
am the district manager.
I know. And he just, he got the shoes, he stormed out of the store, and then I go back, and God's like, "Let's pray for him." So I pray for him, and I pray blessings over him and stuff, and I forgive him. And then he comes back in, and because I had done that, God opened up this opportunity for him to come back, which I was terrified when he came back, and I was like, "Oh God, here it comes." But it turned into a situation where he was like, "I'm stressed, I'm going through a hard time. My wife, was wanting to have a date with me, but we got the miscommunication was going on and stuff, and there's all this other things going on," and it just turned into an opportunity where I was able to completely turn the situation. God enabled me to turn the situation around and to apologize to him, and he apologized to me, and then we became friends in that moment. Aww. Yeah, granted, I don't hear from him since that point, but if he would ever show up, now that's been water under the bridge. It's no longer an issue anymore. And so it's just, that we just don't know what the other person's going through. And that's why it's so important to love them and to understand them, that sometimes we ourselves can act ugly. And we want to, you would want someone to treat you with respect and grace when you're acting ugly and you're going through a rough time. And so you want to do the same for other people, because sometimes we're someone else's enemy without even realizing it. Because everyone makes mistakes. I am probably going to irritate some of you from time to time, and I will probably let you down from time to time, just saying, because I'm an imperfect person, and there are moments where I feel really strongly about something, and I will go on the warpath about that thing, the campaign trail, as you call it, Tim.
That's not how that works, but decent application.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but in general, like I'll get all on this trail about something and step on people in the process, not intentionally doing so. And so I
Yeah.
need to recognize that sometimes people will do that to me, and I need to give them grace and to love them through that so they can have their moment. But the grace that God has given me is sufficient for their weakness, just as God's grace for me is sufficient for my weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Because God calls us to be like Him in ways.
Yeah.
And so that just sticks out to me. And and here's another thing. I feel led to bring this out. At the end of the day, God will bring justice. He will bring. He is promised in His word. He says, "Vengeance is His." That is in His word, and I want to make sure that I can give you the scripture verse where that is. Vengeance. Whoops. Vengeance is mine.
Is mine.
Yeah. Let's see. That's from Deuteronomy 32:35. Vengeance is mine. And then I guess it's referenced again in Romans. But like God promised that, vengeance is His. It's up to Him to bring the vengeance. And He will. And if there is people in your life that just won't get it and they die not getting it, and you've done your job, you've loved them, you prayed blessing over them and everything, and they still don't get it, God's gonna there will be justice. Like He is loving, but God is also just. And so he pays back people for what they've done. And if we accept Christ, then His blood covers all of that, all of our sins and transgressions, and we don't receive, what we deserve, because all of us deserve death. But when we do accept Christ, that is covered by His blood, and we don't receive that. It's a free gift. And so instead, we just get judged on what we do and do not do. So that's in the word. So if you're concerned that if I let this go, there will never be justice. No, there will be justice. God is just.
And man, that's one of the most freeing things I've discovered in my life is that when I let things go, there is going to be justice for it. And gosh, dude, when before I learned that, I was trying to give out justice and convict people, and like I was so petty. My goodness, I was so petty because I thought that it was all on my shoulders to, avenge myself and to maintain my honor and all this stupid crap, dude. Like when I got rid of that, I started realizing that, well, the cool thing is that it's up to each man to seek out their own salvation.
Yes.
Some people are not going to do it, and that's okay. That's why they live crappy lives, and that's why you go on their social media and all they do is ever complain about people. Have you ever met somebody that just seems like they're just always upset about something or their life is always falling apart? Well, guess what, brother? We all have the same issues for the most part. Like, Granted, I don't have cancer or anything, and I refuse to have cancer in Jesus' name.
Yeah.
I refuse it. I can't associate. I'm not saying that you don't have something that I don't have, like we each have, but I have my own, like everybody's got issues, dude. Everybody's got family issues. Everybody's got personal issues. Everybody's got insecurities. Get over yourself. When you realize that you're just responsible for yourself, you're responsible with letting Jesus love you properly. Like I asked Brandon earlier what his focus was when it comes to like life coaching or just being who he is. Oh, what was it that you told me, Brandon?
It was about addressing thought life, and then also identity, like self-evaluation. Yeah,
and that's so interesting. Like one of your areas of focus and something that you're really strong with is saying, okay, well, I've flubbed up this situation with this person. What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Okay. Like what was bad in my heart? Okay, Brandon, how am I responsible first?
Yes.
And that's such a freeing place from which to live, man. Because when you start looking at that, you've already got so much to work on. You don't have time to work on other people. Yeah. But if everybody did that, it'd be a perfect world. But that's the cool thing, as Christians, we're called to bring the kingdom, and all the kingdom is a relationship with Jesus. Walking in relationship with Jesus is heaven.
Yeah.
That's why the gospel is not about getting to heaven. God, the gospel is about having a relationship with Jesus. So heaven is brought here,
Yeah.
you know, but sorry, I'll get off my horse.
No, it's great. No, I love it. But yeah, it's vengeance is God's, and you want it to be God's because God knows, he sees everything. If you believe in God, you know that he is omnipresent and he is omniscient. So that means he sees every action that happens and knows every hidden intention behind it. So when he does finally bring justice, it's not going to be flubbed up justice. Like, he will rightfully judge you based off of your true motives and true actions. And you will get exactly what is deserving of those things. Like, you can't hide from him. It's not a surprise. He's not caught off guard by your actions or by someone else's actions. He sees exactly how much it cost you when that person did that thing towards you. He sees exactly why they did that thing, and he also looks at what you're doing, and he knows that you have a part in it in some shape, way, or form. But if you work on your part, then you're covered. You've taken care of your part. That's the most important thing. What is my part in this? That's how you get to a place of untouchableness. It's just like, if you're working on yourself and you recognize that you're imperfect and that you have made your own mistakes and you're humble about that, like, that's what God's wanting us to get to, because when we get to that place, we're not concerned anymore about what the other person did, because we've had our own list of crap that we've done, and I'm not going to judge you, and we can trust that God's going to take care of the situation. He knows it, and he's going to do it well. He's going to bring out justice well in a way that you cannot, like the Bible says, that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. The only way that that's going to happen is if God knows the situation. He knows the room. He knows the situation well, better than we do, so that there is absolutely no reason why we could justify not to bow in his presence, because it's checkmate. Like, you can't, there's no, oops, I didn't know, oops, I, whatever, like, nope, I talked to you about that here, I brought this person into your life, I did this, I did that, and you ignored this moment, and that moment, and I brought this out, and I gave you this amount of time, and I said this amount of times with you, and still, no. No, you can't tell me that. I see your intentions, I see your motives, and this is what the result is. It's going to be just separating bone from marrow, like sharper than any two-edged sword, just right down. And that's not a scary thing. We deep down crave justice. That's why we want revenge when crap happens to us, because we want that. And the only problem is if we don't work on our side, we're still part of the problem. Like, honestly, we may not be the transgressor, and we may not be ultimately be wrong for the situation, but we still have our own things we must work out between God, our own salvation with him. And so that's why I feel like God calls us to love our enemies. And I guess to kind of wrap it up quickly here, the last question is, what are practical ways of loving your enemies? And I think, like, we need to just touch on that before we close it out, because I love practicality, and I'm always glad that you bring this up, Tim, because I always think about the spiritual first. But there are practical methods. Would you like to touch on this first before I do, Tim?
Sure. So, there's a lot of Christians out there, and a lot of people who view the Christian faith as just this swirly mass of words and rituals and whatnot. But, we're not called to just go to a Sunday mass or a sermon or listen to whatever and then just like live our life. We're called to apply what Jesus taught us,
Yeah.
Much like you go to school, it's like, okay, I'm going to go to school to be a doctor. I'm going to study for 11 years. And when I get in the operating room, I'm just going to do it. No, that's not how we're supposed to do it. So there is practical application. Like, this whole thing about heaping coals on people? You don't actually heap coals on people's heads.
Not literally.
Like, so what does that look like practically? And we talk a lot about this type of thing in our young adults group, but You know, if somebody's coming to you and they're just like, they won't shut up about their personal life. You know, like they seem to have a lot in there and they're not picking up on social cues, right? And they're talking over people and they're just being aggressive and they're just making comments to themselves like nobody cares about me. Nobody. Well, the truth is, okay, look at it factually. The truth is nobody listens to you because you don't listen to people. You don't care about other people. Like you're not interested in them. So why do you think they're going to want to be your friend? I mean, that's the truth, right? People don't want somebody who don't want to be friends with a black hole of just self whatever. But, you know, that's what grace is, right? Grace is where you're given something that you don't deserve. And this is Jesus's whole platform, right? He gives us something we don't deserve. He gives us salvation, something we don't deserve. We have not earned that. We cannot earn that. We cannot earn grace. We can't. There's nothing you can do, man. Like if you go back to the Old Testament, there were people that were sacrificing hundreds of goats and bulls and cows and all this stuff, and it was never ending. You could never get to a point where you sacrificed enough to overcome your sin.
Yeah.
Right. So when you have somebody that seems like a black hole for any type of resource, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, how do I love them right now? Like, what do they actually need? Do they need this person that just, well, okay, so what would be loving right now? Well, they obviously have never had anybody in their life that's loved them through boundaries and shown them what healthy boundaries look like.
Yeah.
There's nobody in their life that has, this is just assuming, of course, just thinking, okay, well, what do they need? They don't feel valued. They don't feel heard. If they felt valued and heard, they wouldn't talk incessantly.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, if they knew who they were, they wouldn't have all these self-doubting. Okay, so if that's the case, and you know they're trying to get something from, what they really need is to feel valued. They need to know who they are. They need to know that people are willing to listen, even though what they say is just dumb. You know, and so it's like you have to focus on what they actually need. You know, what are practical ways of love? So that person, okay, well, let me ask you some questions. I'm actually going to engage with you. So you're talking, like it's really easy for me in those moments to just check out, just check out because I'm uninterested. It's one of my selfish traits, right? But I have to think, okay, well, let me actually challenge you. So what I hear you saying is this. But I think what you like, let me understand. So you're telling me that when you are engaging, it's hard for you to connect with people, and it doesn't seem like anybody wants to be your friend, and you're talking to people, and you just want them to know stuff about you, or no, you're telling me that you want to just get to know people and whatever. But every time you engage with people, you don't ask anything to get to know them. You tell them things so they can get to know you.
Yeah.
So, like, okay, why do you do that? So taking the time to actually engage with that and not say it from a position of emotional, like, well, dude, that's why nobody likes you. What the heck? No, it's like, okay, well, here's what you're saying. And here's what I think you mean. Here's where I think the breakdown might be. Let's talk about this because you matter.
Yeah. So like taking a risk and like talking to them and helping them out, like with the intentionality to help them to see things that maybe they hadn't seen. Kind of makes me think of like taking like in a farming sense of like taking a sick plant and putting it in more fertile soil so they say they can help it gain some strength back by fertilizing it better. So that makes me think of that. I think another practical way of like loving enemies is, again, when someone irritates you, to introspect and think, am I capable of doing this myself? Because if you can, and you do, and you can think of times you have done that. So like, for instance, with the family friend being manipulative, have I been manipulative? Yes, I have been manipulated in my past. Okay, I need to forgive them. You know, I need to let it go because I'm just as capable of being manipulative. That I know that I've been passive aggressive. That's manipulation. So I have no reason to allow myself to continue to hate them because I am just as capable of being manipulative as they are. So we're going to just watch that. Nope. Just cut that off and love them instead. I think another practical way of loving your enemies is to be intentional in thinking about the ways that they have changed your life in ways you might not have changed before them. So like, for instance, again, thinking back with the family friends that caused issues, since then, I am more capable of recognizing when I'm being manipulated than I was before. So I have a better defense against that, and I'm able to recognize it and avoid the same pitfall, like without going through that. And I'm grateful because it could have been much worse. I could have been in an abusive situation physically and had to figure that out and come out of that. I didn't have to go down that path. Thank God that didn't go that direction. So I can avoid even worse situations because of that. So finding ways of like, how did this person help me? You know, in the case of governmental officials that I didn't like in the past, they taught me how to pray properly for people I don't like. You know, for the government that I have viewed as my enemy, I now pray for them. And so now, because I've recognized the benefit that's come out of that, you know, and because humility, being humble, you know, that helps me love my enemies, because it's like, okay, again, going back to the scripture verses of do unto others as you have them do unto you. Mm-hmm. Would I want someone to pray for me when I'm doing bad things? Yes. Would I want someone to be calm and to like be patient with me and to like, Brandon, this is not who you are. You know, don't do this because this is not you. I don't believe this is you. To like believe the best in me, like think about what I'd want from them, and then give that to them. Like not what I want revenge wise, because I don't want revenge acted upon me. Like recognizing do unto others as you have them do unto you. If I want revenge to happen to me, then yeah, okay, go get revenge so that you can expect revenge to come back your way, because the Bible says if you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. Mm-hmm. So it's like, do I really want to live by revenge and die by revenge? No, I don't. I want to live by forgiveness and die by forgiveness and being forgiven from others. So it's just like, I think those are some practical ways of like, what have they taught me? How am I capable of doing what they're doing? Being humble. And again, and this cannot be overstated, pray blessings over your enemies. That is the best way. You don't have to interact with the person. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to be around them. You just pray for them when you start feeling irritated by what they're doing and you feel tempted to be afraid or angry or prideful. Use that emotion, turn it into the desire instead to be loving, and start praying blessing over them and start being thankful for them. Like when I say use it, I don't mean like give into it, but I mean like use it as like a alert. Like, I'm feeling this way. I'm going to instead love them and pray for them. Because like the more times you pray for someone and you pray positive for them, let me tell you, the less you feel afraid of them. The less you feel controlled by them. Because now you're taking the matters that you can take into your hands, you are taking into your hands, you're taking control back. They can't control you because you're praying for them and you're praying good over them. And that empowers you. It does not demean you, it empowers you. If you can pray blessings over a person you don't like and that doesn't like you. Like that is very empowering. As one who has had to do that many times, I can
absolutely. Say. Like there is an absolute limit to your emotional ability to control and to manipulate and to get back at and have vengeance yourself. But, freaking Alex Del Valle. By the way, Alex is going to be a guest with us tomorrow. But he gave us this thing from, what is it? Hobby Lobby. So we went to Hobby Lobby, got us this little thing, and it says, give love. It's the only thing you'll never run out of. And it's absolutely true. It's kind of a cliche saying, but man, like when you allow Jesus to love you and you allow that grace to come in and you allow him to give you mercy, show you who you are, your value, your purpose, all that stuff, it's supposed to flow out of us like living water. The Bible says it's not what goes into us that defiles us, but what comes out. And when you're pressed, when you are squeezed, what comes out? A lot of us, when we're pressed and squeezed, myself included, like, man, when I get in heated conversations with my wife, the worst comes out of me. Like I get passive aggressive, I get quiet. I stonewall. I say mean things, you know, and I lead a young adults group as a Christian. You know, I have a life coaching business where I help people like figure things out and provide perspective. And I still do that stuff, man. You know, so I'm not perfect either. But the cool thing is that, like, when it comes down to it, you know, allowing Jesus to pour into, that's a lifestyle, you know, the relationship thing. And that's why he's got to be at the top of that relationship pyramid. You know, you're supposed to renew your mind daily. And what that means is, you know, you're always going to be assailed with thoughts. You know, the enemy doesn't have any power, like Satan, Lucifer, the devil, whatever you want to call him. You know, he's already been dethroned. He has no power. The only thing he can do is talk to you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all he can do. He can talk to you, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, even Jesus said, you know, the power of life and death is in the tongue. He walked past that tree and said, "Curse you, tree." The tree died, man.
Yeah, fig
like
tree.
That's the power that the enemy does have. He has the ability to sway your mind, but you have the authority to take those thoughts captive and weigh them against what Jesus is trying to teach you of love. Like, okay, how are you supposed to love your enemy? Well, you use Jesus as a standard. You have to ask Jesus, okay, well, look inside, just like we've been saying this whole time. Look inside. What am I feeling? What is my responsibility? Okay, God, when I fall short, like, what do you think of me? Oh, well, Tim, when you fall short, you're still awesome. You're still my child. Yeah, I still love you. Story of the prodigal son. Go read it.
Yeah.
Right? The kid blew his entire inheritance, came back, tried to work in the fields. The dad was like, "Son, you are my son. Get this kid a robe, give him his ring, you know, slay the fattest calf. You know, even though you messed up, I love you.
Yeah,
you're still my son."
And get this, the prodigal son literally wished his dad was dead so he could get that inheritance. He literally wished his dad was dead so he could get that inheritance, and dad was just like, you know what? Take it. Let him go and do his own thing. And even then, after taking half of that inheritance, wishing your dad was dead, just leaving and going off and squandering it all on prostitutes and gambling, whatever else things he did when he was living wildly, and he lost it all, and he came back, didn't bother his dad. He was just like, "Come here, son." And not only that, he ran to his son when he saw him a far way off. And I remember someone saying that it was not socially acceptable in that time for men to run, like, unless I guess they were in war or something, but like, you know, otherwise, like, it was not, like, it was like, why are you running kind of thing. So for a grown man to be running at you, like, either something is wrong or this guy is really embarrassing himself. And he did it. And he ran for his son and embraced him while he was still a far way out. Like, that says something. And that's how God views us. He's like, it's like, it doesn't matter how many things a person does wrong. The minute they recognize that they made a mistake and they're apologetic about it and they're ready to turn away from what they did, there's Jesus. He's right there. He's ready to forgive. He's ready to bring you back in like nothing ever happened. Like, and that's the cool thing. God doesn't lord your sins over you. He doesn't like, oh, you did this and this and this and that and whatever, and I just can't trust you, whatever. Like, no, it's done. It's covered by his blood. No one remembers that anymore. You don't have to walk on eggshells around Jesus. It's not how he works. And you don't have to do that around the Father either. So that's awesome. So yeah, I think that covers it well. So I wanna close out here. So I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a lot of fun. We broadcast every week on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And man, I want to thank you guys for watching. I do enjoy this a lot. I learn in the process. I don't know about you guys, but I learn every time.
I got it all figured out.
I learned in the process of doing things with Thought Raid. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If this stream has means something to you, I would like to encourage you to subscribe and to donate to us. We have a Patreon, and the link for that is down in the description down below. We actually have now put in our application to become an official business, so soon we will become Thought Raid LLC. But I will still introduce this as Thought Raid, not Thought Raid LLC. And we're planning on getting our EIN. We're going to get ourselves a bank account open soon. So everything will be officially in place, ready to go. So we are definitely primed and ready to receive donations. So if this has meant something to you, please donate to us. We want to reach $25,000 a month so that we can hire a CPA, we can hire a video editor, we want to hire someone who can like really engage the community well. Me and Tim, we want to bring ourselves on board. This would help us to do that and to continue to expand Thought Raid and to reach more people and to just increase the value of what we got. So if this has meant a lot to you, please consider becoming our patron and follow that link there at the bottom. But otherwise, I want to thank you guys for watching. We will see you tomorrow where we will be having a special guest, Alex. We want you to be there for that. We will be talking on the topic of, specifically on how to overcome labels that have been put against you and how to look at your self-identity. Because our special guest, he has been through a lot. And he has definitely had a lot of labels put on himself over the years, and he has overcome them, many different labels. And you really want to be there for that because he's got a great story to tell, and he'll have a lot of insight on this matter. So if you are struggling with self-hatred, or you're struggling with how you view yourself, like low self-esteem, or you've had someone label you all your life in different areas and demean you, you want to be there tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you then. You guys have a good evening.